Why don't you sit here? Bill can sit here.
Well, thank you.
Before we get started, I think there were some pioneers. Of course, we have the pioneers here on stage, but there were some other really important pioneers in the video we just saw, and a couple of them are here in the audience. So, Mitch Kapor, who is a regular at D, could you just stand up and wherever you are? There he is. And Fred Gibbons, who has not come to D before but is here tonight. Fred. There's Fred. Right there. And I don't know if he's in the room, but I do want to recognize our fellow journalist Brent Schlender from Fortune, who did the last, to my knowledge, the last joint interview these guys did. It was not on a stage, but it was a Fortune magazine interview. Brent, I don't know if you're in the room. If you are, can you stand? Maybe he's
way back there.
Way over there.
So let's get started. I wanted to ask, there's been a lot of mano a mano catfight kind of thing in a lot of the blogs and the press and stuff like that. And we wanted to, the first question I kind of was interested in asking is what you think each has contributed to the computer and technology industry, starting with you, Steve, for Bill, and vice versa.
Well, Bill built the first software company in the industry. And I think he built the first software company before anybody really in our industry knew what a software company was, except for these guys. And that was huge. That was really huge. And the business model that they ended up pursuing turned out to be the one that worked really well, for the industry. Mm-hmm. So I think, but the biggest thing was Bill was really focused on software before almost anybody else had a clue that it was really the software. That's what I see. I mean, a lot of other things you could say, but that's the high order bit. And I think building a company is really hard, and it requires your greatest persuasive abilities to hire the best people you can and keep them at your company and keep them working, doing the best work of their lives, hopefully. And Bill's been able to stay with it for all these years. So,
Bill, how about the contribution of Steve and Apple?
Well, first I want to clarify, I'm not fake Steve Jobs. What Steve's done is quite phenomenal. If you look back to 1977, that Apple II computer, the idea that it would be a mass market machine, the bet that was made there by Apple uniquely, there were other people with products, but the idea that this could be an incredible, empowering phenomena, Apple pursued that dream. Then one of the most fun things we did was the Macintosh, and that was so risky. People may not remember that Apple really bet the company. Lisa hadn't done that well, and some people were saying, okay, that general approach wasn't good. But the team that Steve built, even within the company, to pursue that, even some days it felt a little ahead of its time. I don't remember that Twiggy disk drive.
128K.
Yeah.
The Twiggy disk drive, yes.
Steve gave a speech once, which is one of my favorites, where he talked about, in a certain sense, we build the products that we want to use ourselves. So he's really pursued that with incredible taste and elegance that has had a huge impact on the industry. And his ability to always come around and figure out where that next bet should be has been phenomenal. Apple literally was failing when Steve went back and reinfused the innovation and risk-taking that have been phenomenal. So the industry's benefited immensely from his work. We've both been lucky to be part of it, but I'd say he's contributed as much as anyone.
We've also both been incredibly lucky to have had great partners that we started the companies with, and we've attracted great people. I mean, so everything that's been done at Microsoft and at Apple has been done by just remarkable people, none of which are sitting up here, today.
Well, not us.
Well, you're sort of the,
Not
not us.
And
You're in a way, you're the stand-ins for all those other people.
in a way we are, in a very tangible way.
So Bill mentioned the Apple II in 1977 and 30 years ago, and there were a couple of other computers which were aimed at the idea that average people might be able to use them. And looking back on it, a really average person might not have been able to use them by today's standards, but it certainly broadened the base of who could use computers. I actually looked at an Apple ad from 1978. It was a print ad. That shows you how ancient it was. And it said, thousands of people have discovered the Apple computer. Thousands of people. And it also said, you don't want to buy one of these computers where you put a cartridge in. I think that was a reference to one of the Atari or something.
I don't know.
You want a computer you can write your own programs on. And so the world, and obviously people
We had some very strange ads back then. We had one where it was in a kitchen, and there was a woman that looked like the wife, and she was typing in recipes on the computer with the husband looking on approvingly in the back. Stuff like that.
Yeah, how did that work for you?
I don't think well.
So, but just think back to, I know that you started Microsoft prior to 1977. I think Apple started the year before in 76. Microsoft in
74 was when we started writing the
75.
BASIC. And then we did shipped the BASIC in 75.
Okay. Most people, some people here, but I don't think most people know that there was actually some Microsoft software in that Apple II computer. Do you want to talk about what happened there, or how that occurred?
Yeah, there'd been the Altair and a few other companies, actually about 24, that had done various machines. But the 77 group included the PET, TRS-80,
Commodore.
and Commodore PET. TRS-80, and the Apple II. The original Apple II BASIC, the integer BASIC, we had nothing to do with. But then there was a floating point one where, and I mostly worked with Woz on that.
Let me tell this story. So Woz, my partner, we started out with this guy named Steve Wozniak, brilliant guy. He writes this BASIC that is like the best BASIC on the planet. It does stuff that no other BASIC's ever done. You don't have to run it to find your error messages. It finds them when you type it in and stuff. It's perfect in every way, except for one thing, which is it's just fixed point, right? It's not floating point. And so we're getting a lot of input that people want this BASIC to be floating point. And like we're begging Woz, please make this floating point.
Who's we? How many people are in Apple?
Well, me. We're begging Woz to make this floating point. And he just never does it, and he wrote it by hand on paper. I mean, he didn't have an assembler or anything to write it with. It was all just written on paper, and he'd type it in. He just never got around to making a floating point. Why? Well, this is one of the mysteries of life. I don't know, but he never did. And so, Microsoft had this very popular, really good floating point BASIC that we ended up going to them and saying, help.
And how much was I think you were telling us earlier?
That was $31,000.
That Apple paid you for
the floating point BASIC. And I flew out to Apple. I spent 2 days there getting the cassette. The cassette tapes were the main ways that people stored things at the time.
Right.
And, that was fun. I think the most fun is later when we worked together.
Well, what was the most fun? Tell the story about the most fun that was later.
And maybe later, not the most fun.
Let him talk.
I'm teasing.